time. This commentary is pertaining to Scott Peterson. He has commentary that has been relayed on Peacock in a new documentary. There's also another documentary that was released pertaining to Laci Peterson by Netflix. And he decides he wants to talk 20 years later pertaining to what happened or what he thinks happened to his wife, Laci and Connor. Peacock is the source of this information. Thank you for joining me.
When I got home, I started to call our friends. And they hadn't spoken to her. They didn't know where it was. And then as the hours progressed, it's like, oh my God, she's not somewhere that we know of. So it was anxiety and panic.
Scott said that Laci went to walk the dog and she hadn't come back. And my husband, I could only hear his end of the conversation, but I just remember him saying, "I'm coming, brother." And he hung up the phone.
Sister-in-law speaking.
Walked out the front door and got in his car.
It's Christmas Eve. I'm at my cabin with my family.
Former detective.
When the phone rings up here on a holiday, it's not good news. The sergeant said, "Do you mind driving down to the city of Modesto for this missing person? It's a pregnant lady. We got a gut feeling something ain't right. Hey, she's 8 months pregnant. We need to find her." It was like 9 o'clock at night. It's 90 miles, so it takes an hour and a half to get there.
Wow.
I said, lock the house up. Don't let anybody go in it until I get there. And when I get there, introduce me to Scott Peterson. When I drove up to the house, the first thing I noticed was there had to have been 30 people in the driveway.
You had neighbors, friends, and family canvassing the neighborhood looking for Laci. There was an underlying panic. Where is she?
They were knocking on doors, yelling her name. They had a helicopter up. They had dog teams and officers walking in the park looking for her. Scott was there. I told him who I was and what I was there for, and I was, there to help. And he was kind of just nonchalant. He didn't have any urgency about him that I noticed. To me, that was suspicious.
He was just calm. He was pleasant. He was polite. He didn't have the near panic that everybody else we met after that had.
I asked Scott to take me in the house. I wanted to know if there was any sign of struggle or a break-in.
Scott never made any claims that there was a home intrusion, that there was somebody had broken in the house and abducted her by force. For me, it was pretty much immediate that there was foul play here for the simple reason that Laci didn't lead an at-risk lifestyle. When you have somebody like that goes missing, the first place you look and the first place you have to clear out is the person closest to the victim, and that was her husband.
In the driveway, I saw in the back of his truck, he had 4 or 5 big outside umbrellas, and they were all wrapped in a blue tarp. He said, well, I was going to store them for the winter at my shop.
We've got patio umbrellas that he said he was going to take over to the warehouse, but ended up back at his house.
I noticed the washing machine had all these rags on it, and I thought that was odd. What Scott told me was he went fishing, said it started to rain when I was out there fishing, and so I was wet, so I wanted to wash my clothes. He went right to the washer, took these rags out, and took his clothes off and put them in the washer. When I searched his truck, after he told me his clothes were all wet from fishing, his jacket in the truck was not wet at all. To me, he's just making excuses for evidence that we're finding or seeing. They didn't make sense, anything he was telling me.
Peacock is the source of this information. So you hear former detectives speaking pertaining to the information at that time. One rushing down to the scene, an hour and a half away. That's a long way. Christmas time, holidays. Sister-in-law who's advocating for Scott Peterson says she allegedly walked a dog. You're going to hear a lot of that talk if you haven't already. But from what I've read pertaining to these detectives that have spoken, that they debunked all of those eyewitnesses. The reason why they never testified in court. The prosecution didn't allow them to testify because they had already debunked Lacey walking a dog, either during and or after her disappearance. They obviously set a timeline of her disappearance. Scott's attitude, they say, aloof, not engaged. Why not? Your wife is missing. She's pregnant, 8 months pregnant. The detective says he knew something wasn't right because she didn't live an at-risk lifestyle. You hear that a lot in true crime. Oh, no at-risk lifestyle. Of course, we've learned that true crime can befall you no matter what type of lifestyle you have. But nonetheless, that was their assertion at the time. Putting clothes into a washing machine while a detective is on scene, that's very bizarre. Dirty rags on top of the washing machine. He was scurrying to put that evidence away, naturally. Didn't think about it at the time because he probably didn't think anybody was going to come inside the house. So now let me do something with this evidence. Throw my clothes in here because they got wet while out fishing. Umbrellas on the back patio. Big three large ones too, matter of fact. The kind you see over tables, you know, when you sit outside, you have a nice patio set. 3 large umbrellas, which seem extensive for that backyard area. Don't know what that's all about. But originally wrapped in tarp, they say. Scott's version. So what was he doing with those umbrellas? What was really going on? And why would you want to store them at your storage facility or work? Because when summer comes, you'd have to haul them back. Those are the things that detectives pay attention to, the little things. The jacket was dry inside of his car, inside of the truck that the officer checked, detective. Don't you find that interesting? You said it was raining, pouring rain. Throwing your clothes into the washer while the detective is standing there. But yet when he checks your truck, your jacket is dry. So basically you didn't have your jacket on and it's wintertime. Stay woke, everybody, and you're on the water. He knew then something wasn't right. Dry jacket, but wet clothes. But that's the whole point of deception. It's that people don't plan for everything. It's kind of like fly by the seat of their pants. At that moment, we do and say things, but we don't plan for every little question, every little Q&A. And he didn't know that detective was going to walk around the house. He probably thought he was just going to come in, get his assertion of what happened that day, you know, what time he got up, things like that, but not walk around the house, look around. And actually, you'd be a fool to tell an officer detective, oh, no, you can't look around, because that would seem suspicious. But they noticed his behavior was off-putting. 30 people in the driveway, and you have this husband who doesn't seem to be in tune to his wife missing. Why is that? We're going to get a little information pertaining to this PEACOCK documentary. Hope everyone is well. Thank you for joining me. We're going to go to Forbes. Two very different documentary series have premiered within days about the tragic deaths of Lacey Peterson and her unborn son, Connor. Each takes a different stance on whether Scott Peterson is guilty of murdering his family. Director Sky Borgman's 3-episode series of American Murder, Lacey Peterson, premiered on August 14th on Netflix, featuring interviews with Lacey's mom, Sharon Roca, and Amber Fry, who was dating Scott and did not know he was married. Borgman's series was quickly followed by Peacock's 3-episode Face-to-Face with Scott Peterson from directors Shireen Anderson and Poe Cutchins, which premiered on August 20th. For the first time since before his arrest in 2003, 51-year-old Scott speaks on camera and defends himself, which claims that he did not kill his family. There was an immediate fascination and nationwide media frenzy upon reports that Lacey, who was 8 months pregnant with her first child, had gone missing. It was Christmas Eve of 2002, and it seemed as though everyone in her Modesto community went out looking for the 27-year-old. There would be no happy ending. Their bodies were found 4 months later in the San Francisco Bay, and Scott was arrested. That's interesting that they floated up 4 months later. Very interesting. It's been more than 2 decades, and we're still talking about this case. Fascination remains, with some firmly believing it is case closed, and others were questioning if the right man is behind bars. So let's ask that question. Is the right man behind bars? There's something, There's something so captivating about the final photo of Lacey that her family and friends plastered all over her Modesto neighborhood and on television following her disappearance. In the image, a smiling Lacey is sitting in a wicker chair, dressed in a red satin pantsuit. Her hands are wrapped around her belly, and her dimple grin is aimed straight at the camera. She was at a friend's holiday party, and it would be the last time they saw her. Scott was at a party roughly 100 miles away in Fresno with an unsuspecting Fry. Anderson's interviews with Scott are very interesting. He talks about how close he and Lacey were and reminisces about their marriage, saying they were so in love and they would share a bowl of cereal each morning. And he claims that on the morning of her disappearance. Do you believe that? They shared a bowl of cereal? They ate out of the same bowl? He also recalls his relationship with Fry as just sex, despite the roughly 29 hours of phone calls she and police recorded as Scott called her, professing how much he cared for her as the world was looking for his missing wife. And that's what's very pivotal in this story as well, that he continued to talk to Miss Fry while his wife was currently missing. Borgman took a fresh look at the case with new interviews with detectives, reporters, lawyers, jurors, recounting their experiences. The series also features a conversation with Fry, who bravely helped law enforcement break the case. Borgman and her team were also in talks with Scott, but he chose not to participate. Wonder why? Why not? In an interview, Borgman told me she promised Roca her doc would be focused on Lacey and who she was as a person, and she kept her word. She also focused on intimate partner violence and interviews with 3 of Lacey's best friends, sent a message that women need to tell one another the truth about what's happening behind closed doors. We've got to ask the hard questions and look out for each other. Some of the same journalists, jurors, and law enforcement officials were interviewed in both series. Also, Scott's sister and sister-in-law spoke in both, as they firmly believe in his innocence. Fry ultimately helped the Modesto Police Department crack the case, which led to Scott's guilty verdict and death row sentence. That sentence has been overthrown, and he's currently facing life in prison with no chance of parole. The Los Angeles Innocence Project recently took on the case and is hoping to free Scott. A judge ruled that they can get DNA testing done on the duct tape that was found wrapped around Lacey's body. Request for DNA testing on additional items was not granted. Scott claims that a burglary in the neighborhood is the key to the mystery Lacey's family doesn't believe exists when the burglary actually occurred, and whether it has anything to do with her disappearance remains in question. Per Scott in the interview with Anderson, there was a burglary across... Sorry about that, everybody. Brief interruption. Once again, per Scott in the interview with Anderson, You know, there's a burglar across the street from our home. There were a lot of people in that burglary. And I believe that Lacey went over there to see what was going on. And that's when she was taken. It's hard to believe a very pregnant woman who was having issues walking would endanger herself and her child by disrupting a crime in progress. But with new eyes on the case, perhaps new evidence will be uncovered. Anderson asked Scott about the day of his arrest. When my family was having rough times, we always did something, he explained. We go play golf or we go out, fishing off of San Diego and that stuff. That's how we relate. That's how we've always gotten together. We never talked about rough times. We just go do things together. It may seem odd to other people, but we're not guys who talk. That day I was headed to Torrey Pines Golf Course to play golf with my brothers and my dad. We just wanted to get together that day and be together. So what rough times was he speaking of that they had to get together and play golf? He claimed that he was driving and he thought he was being followed by tabloid reporters and feared having his photo taken. He didn't realize he was actually being followed by police. I didn't think it was them. When they told me, I had just a terrible physical reaction, a really emotional physical reaction, but I was in a car with two detectives. Really didn't believe the police so much when they told me. Part of me said, no, that's not possible. When Anderson asked him if it was easy to remember what life was like 20 years ago, Scott answered that the memories remain very fresh in his mind. Every moment is so real, so tactile, and still there, the smells and the light and the sound. And when I said goodbye to Lacey, and then my family was gone, I drove away expecting to come back that afternoon and have a wonderful Christmas together after we both had fun mornings. And they were gone. And it's still very, very present. But there are certainly times that I become a wreck. Excuse me, I'm trying not to be too emotional while I'm out here in the main room of the prison. Both series are well done and offer different viewpoints and strongly clashing opinions of what happened to Lacey and Connor on that day nearly 22 years ago. Lacey's family and law enforcement officials remain steadfast in their belief that Scott murdered Lacey while his family is convinced that he's innocent. Will new DNA testing point to a different killer, or will it confirm what Lacey's family already believes to be true? You can follow the LA Innocence Project to find out. Dana Feldman is the reporter of this commentary. Forbes is the source. Get emotional in the prison day room. Why would you get emotional now, 22 years later, when you didn't get emotional when your wife and child went missing? See, it's those little things that show you you're dealing with a pathological liar. I do not believe that his wife encountered a burglar in progress. As someone said in this commentary, why would a woman endanger her life to go peek across the street and intervene in a robbery? What sense would that make? Hey, what are you doing with those things? Who are you? Now, as I said before in a commentary, in a short, you do have nosy neighbors, messy Karens. I can't say what type of person she was in life, but I can't see her going over asking questions. I don't think so. I don't think that happened. Why not just call 911? Hey, I think something's going on at my neighbor's. But that's the whole point. You wouldn't even know what's going on. If you're not talking to them every day to know that they're moving, they're getting rid of furniture, they're being evicted. See, you don't know. So why would you go check? You'd only go check if you were cool with them and you thought perhaps they were moving. I don't think it ever took place. There's been all this conversation as of late about a mattress and bloodstains and all of this type of nonsense. But so far as you hear in this commentary, the only thing that's going to be tested is what was pertaining to her case and her remains, which is the duct tape. That is the only evidence that's going to be examined for Scott Peterson. What will it reveal? Other DNA from a male or a female? Will they even be able to extract anything due to how long she was in the water and evidence being retained for 20-something years. What will the duct tape reveal? As I said before, many people have given commentary pertaining to allegedly seeing her walking a dog, not walking a dog. And as I said before, none of those people were brought into court to testify because the state debunked all of those testimonies. And we've seen this with true crime. There's always people who come forward saying they saw something, they heard something, and it has to be proven to some degree if it's true or not. Yeah, I heard this. Yeah, I saw this. And sometimes there's just no proving anything. You don't have CCTV footage. What can you prove about seeing a person allegedly walking a dog? We learned that the dog was running around on a leash. I do believe that was set up by Mr. Peterson. All roads lead to him because there was a lot of evidence mentioned and brought forward by the state, if you carefully remember the case. Phone conversations between he and Amber, evidentiary material from, workplace, truck, just different things. Naturally, he has an excuse for the hair color. Oh, I did this to get away from the reporters. They're chasing me, stalking me. The sister says he had a lump sum of money on him because he had just sold a truck to his brother. The allegation of him being near the Mexican border, she has an excuse for that. Oh, we have family that lives near there. That's why he was down there. But it's all suspicious. Changing your hair color, lump sum of money on you. I believe there was something about some IDs too. So it's how it looks. But that's the thing about, as I said, with true crime, there's always an excuse for everything. Oh, I dyed my hair because of this. Oh, I had this lump sum of money on me because of this. Oh, yeah, I was near the Mexican border because of this. Yet you had what we would call a kidnap kit in your truck, in your car. Things that most people don't have in their trunk. Duct tape, weapons, rope, things to bind a person with. What do you need that for? Wanting to meet with Amber Fry. Why? All that's in the tape conversation. Sister-in-law says, oh yeah, you all made it seem like he just wanted to order a hamburger while his wife is missing, like he didn't care. It was because he was hungry. He hadn't had any food all day. Well, people are going to perceive what they want. That's just the way it is. People assume things. But what's interesting, as I said, to sit in a documentary and act like you're weeping and mourning and, oh, it's taking a toll on me, talking about this. But you didn't show any emotion when the woman was missing. Pregnant woman, 8 months pregnant. You're out doing your thing. She's out doing her thing that day, allegedly. Or the time before. So you don't really know. Saying you ate out the same cereal bowl that morning. Just souping up stuff for the camera. And then people are going to look and say, well, why would he wait this long to speak? 20 years, that's a long time. Souped up interview with Diane Sawyer. Nonsense. People said then, should have never gave that interview. Because people don't plan for the questions by detectives or reporters or a host of a TV show. They think they're going to have all the answers, but they don't. Because what have I said so many times pertaining to true crime? 50 ways to kill a person, 100 ways to get caught. And that's exactly what happened here. Just another fable of a person out here selfishly roaming the earth, not thinking of anyone but himself, and he got caught. And the fact that he was carrying on with this Fry lady while his wife and child are floating in the ocean shows you his character. And the fact that he was disengaged is because he had checked out. And you see this a lot with murderers. Some are exuberant and act like they care and put on and cry and fall out because a person is missing or deceased, found deceased. But then you have those who are aloof, They're the type that they're looking in their cell phone while you're talking to them, asking them pertinent questions about a missing person, dead person, because they've checked out. People check out of life every day. Circumstances, relationships. This situation is no different. He had checked out. I do believe he didn't want to be a father, a husband, because it was a package deal. It's not just, I'm married to this lady. Okay, now she's pregnant. I ain't ready for this. I don't want this. So what I ask you all today is the obvious. Did he kill his wife and son, unborn son, number one? What was the motive? Was it Amber Fry or just freedom altogether and she just came along for the ride, part of the deal of, okay, I like this lady, let me get rid of her? Had he been plotting the death of his wife and son? If so, how long? What actually happened that morning? Did she even get up to eat cereal? Or was she bludgeoned to death in her sleep, suffocated, strangled? Did they have an argument, disagreement? Older content, he tells, I believe it was Miss Sawyer, that nobody knows our relationship, Lacey and I. She knew what was going on or whatever. So let's ask that question. What was going on in their marriage? Was he out having affairs with different women? Had he been sleeping around before Amber Fry? Checkmate. Had he been making contact with other women, flirting, messaging, talking, emailing, picking up women? Did he have affairs before Amber Fry? And just imagine had Amber Fry not come forward. Boy, they still had the evidence, of course, by cell phone data. But it helps when a person gives details, factual details. She seemed like she was telling the truth. She didn't want any parts of this. Now, you have some women, they would have rolled the ride all the way, supporting Mr. Peterson, all the way to the prison cell. He's not like that. You don't know him. He would never do that. So I'm sure Amber Fry's had a lot of time to think about her relationship with Scott, the short-winded relationship, the lies of deception, because what she had to tell herself is the obvious. If he would unalive an 8-month pregnant woman, he would do the same to me. Because that's what you have to tell yourself when you're dealing with a diabolical mind, a psychopath, that you are not special. And I think a lot of women who deal with men who have murdered their spouses, girlfriends, and they get entangled with them in prison or were entangled with them, however it goes, God forbid they get off on the charge. What makes you think he would not do that to you? How are you exempt? You're not. How are you special? You're not. Because he's a killer. And he's selfish. And if he can think ill towards this human being who he married or dated, he could think the same of you. She was a casualty of war, the war that's in their head, and you would be the same. And that's the one thing I can't understand about women who think that they would be exempt from a violent human being. Oh, I could change him. He wouldn't do that to me. It's no different than being beat up by a man who speaks vile of women, nasty attitude, disposition, the type of men that really hate women. They hate them. They'll never admit it, but they hate them. And another woman will come along and say, well, he won't do that to me. He would never. Why wouldn't he? Old habits die hard. Now, some men do change. Some don't. They go from one abusive relationship to the other. Beating up, battering one, then she runs off or he finally leaves, and then boom, he gets another lady. He does the same to her because he's comfortable being a batterer, being abusive. I often wondered that as well with Scott Peterson. Did he abuse his wife mentally, physically? Did he talk down to her? Did he ever put his hands on Lacey? Push, shove, choke, gaslight, And yes, mental abuse. It's not always physical. Sometimes it's, excuse me, it's mental. Did he mentally abuse his wife? Did she know of any improprieties from her husband? I've wondered that recently as well. Since he speaks of what she knew of their lives together. So what did she know, Scott Peterson? Did your wife know that you were a liar, deceiver? Could it be, as I said, he was a notorious whore? She knew, but she rode the ride, wanted to save her marriage, stay married to him. Did they have conversations about any infidelities, lies? Because, you know, my thing is, if you lie about one thing, you'll lie about another. And all that nonsense about who he was in high school and he was this, he was friendly, all that shit doesn't matter, because in the end, high school is not the same at 27, 28. People change. Not too many people are the same now as they were in high school. It's like night and day. What was going on in their marriage? Was he having affairs? Was Amber Fry the first? Did Lacey find out? And that is what led to her unaliving. She and her boy child, unborn child. Because what would be sad is he had been fooling around, and she rode the ride and stayed. Hurt, but stayed. Could it be she confronted him that morning, night? And one thing begat another, he unalived her. Don't know the method. He'll never tell that. He'll never admit to murdering his wife and child. You don't even know the time of day that she was unalive, she and the baby. Don't know the circumstances. They were getting along, talking. He just planned it out beforehand, or planned it spur of the moment, or planned it 2 minutes before. But we do know that he's a liar. And if you can make it appear to a new woman that you no longer have a spouse, never mention anything about a spouse being pregnant, that would lead one to believe that he had planned the unaliving of Lacey and Connor. And that's the scary part of the story, besides the woman floating up with her baby. Someone that you think cares for you does not. They don't love you and your child to be, and they've been lying to you and deceiving you, and they've also been planning your demise. And I won't doubt that for some time, Scott Peterson had checked out of the relationship, and he had been wanting to get rid of his wife, unborn kid, because he did not want to be responsible. He did not want to be bothered. So he took the easy way out by killing his wife and baby. And what is even more disturbing is if, as I said, she knew deception, but she rode the ride anyway. She caught him in uncompromising situations, telephone calls, phone log sheets to show from, the phone company, calls to other women. Who's to say? Because sometimes people don't tell all of their business. I don't know what Lacey told to her family and friends about her relationship with Scott, that they were having problems, or marital problems, or sexual problems, or other women, anything. Because to me, he would also be the type that would defraud. Because people like this, when they lie, as I said, you lie about one thing, you'll lie about another. They'll be wrapped up in other type of crimes as well. Defrauding people, lying to people. What other problems did they have? Financial? Were there any financial burdens that we never learned about? Were they really financially secure? Because these are the reasons that many men murder their spouses. Financial, infidelity, caught, fraud. They just want out the relationship. They think they're in love with somebody else. Or they just don't want to be married and don't want a kid. And too honorary to tell the truth. Hey, this isn't working for me. I'm not happy. I don't want to be a father. I don't want to be a husband. And I think right now this lady will be alive today. Son will be grown had he just told her the truth. You're a really nice gal, but this isn't for me. And see, the thing I never understand about a person killing a woman and a child, unborn child, it's just crazy because you're not even thinking of that, the fact that you could get caught. The fact that you could get caught. And killing a wife or a mother of a child, you killed the parent, well, you still have the child left, so you're still responsible for that child. Whether you keep the child or somebody else raises the child. See, there's no logic behind murder, deliberate homicide, especially if it's for greed or to get out of responsibility of taking care of someone. The burden of trying not to get caught weighs higher. And that's what Scott Peterson did not plan for. He didn't thoroughly plan the unaliving of Lacey and Connor. That's why he is now currently incarcerated. The death penalty taken off the table. Naturally, political situations got him to where he's able to be in prison and not on death row. Governors come in, they change the laws. He's been afforded the opportunity to still breathe. I still believe he deserves the death penalty. What will the evidence show on the duct tape? Will his DNA be on that duct tape? So far, that's the only evidence that's going to be allowed to be tested. So for his sake, he better hope there is no DNA on there. And if there's none that can be retracted, that will still possibly weigh in his favor to say, well, mine's not on there, so it wasn't me. But did they have duct tape at the house? Similar to what she was bound in. As I've always said on this network, you don't know people. You don't know your family. They don't fully know you. You don't know your neighbors, your friends, your associates, co-workers. You don't know anybody. And it's sad if a person is walking through life thinking they're in a happy relationship. They're content with this person. Or they may not be too content, but they're riding the ride for whatever reason. They're not trying to bow out. But little do they know, someone is plotting, secretly plotting their death to get rid of them, dispose of them. And they're walking by, smiling, laughing, even still having sexual relations, but don't even know that their days are numbered. I think we already know that was the case here with Lacey and the baby. That all this fluff and Christmas holiday cheer and going to parties and spending time with family, talking on phones, going to work, her days were slowly numbered. That's a lot to digest. And she had no idea. Or did she? And that's my last question for this commentary. Did Lacey Peterson have any idea that she was dealing with a psychopath? Did she ever, as I said before, catch him in any type of deception, but forgave him anyway, thinking she would try to make her marriage work? Or was she just a cheerful young lady thinking she had a great husband? He treated her decently and never let on that he did not want to be with her any longer. Never showed signs of deception, cruelty, and that he was going to unalive her. No threats, no pushing, no shoving, no battering, no negative talk, abuse talk, but came like a thief in the night and unalived her and her unborn child in their home. How did it happen? What were the circumstances? Was she asleep? Was she awake? Was she standing up, sitting in a chair? What did he say to her? What did she say to him? Did she plead for her life? Did she ask him why? Why are you doing this? What did I do wrong? Did he talk back? Did he tell her? What was the method? What was the motive? And will he ever tell the truth to what he did to Lacey and why he unalived her and their unborn child, Connor? Or will he continue this lie until he can no longer have breath we will see. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful weekend. Forbes is the source of this information. Like, share, subscribe. Drop your comments below this video. Check out my numerous shorts in the YouTube queue. Check out my community posts and polls. And also follow me on the Newsbreak app under the Vote Excel. And if you'd like to donate to this great network, $Beganji 129 Cash App. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful weekend. You've been listening to the Vote Excel.